Welcome back to another episode on the Expand Your Awareness 2.0 podcast. My name's Aaron. I have very flexible, dynamic voice. I'm not really yelling, but I have a lot of voice. Thank you for joining today's podcast episode, which is all about understanding your identity, your stinky little identity. I mean, you're amazing. You're an infinite spiritual being having a temporary human experience. However, one thing that sometimes happens is we start to think that we are the ego. We are this avatar which we are experiencing reality through. We're infinite spiritual beings experiencing reality through this meat flesh body that then we identify with, and we say, yo, this is who I am. And what happens is then certain agreements are made, certain things happen when we're growing up that we begin to limit ourselves. We have certain beliefs and certain labels that we attach ourselves to. But then what happens is we remain consistent and super loyal like a German shepherd. We remain so loyal to the old agreements that we've made about who we are. When we were growing up and our bully said, you stink. And you said, no, I stink. I really stink. And you stayed loyal to that belief that you stink. Somebody may have said, you're meant to be seen. You're meant to be seen and not heard. I don't know who that would. Maybe that would be like a parent that didn't really know your true power, right? They love you. They're doing the best. They're doing what they can. Hey, you're meant to be seen and not heard. Okay. And you're like, okay, I guess so. And now you're like 25 years old and you're like trying to get this job that you want, but you're like receiving all these blocks. And it's because at a certain point in the past, you agreed to an old identity. You agreed to a certain rule, a certain belief that said, this is who you are and this is how you have to be. But here is the thing. You can break those agreements. Break those agreements. You want to know how you break those agreements? By becoming aware of them and then deciding and saying, why do I keep agreeing to this? Why do I keep agreeing to this? I have a drum right over here. I'm at my, so I just to give you guys a little bit of a life update or something. I just got a house. Can you believe it? I just got a house in Sedona. Yeah. And it's I'll be going back and forth between Vegas and there. And I have all these drums around me right now. But what I'm excited for is there's going to be a podcast studio at this house in Sedona. I'm moving in with some friends of mine. We actually bought the house. My buddy Drew Canoli, many of you may know him. Super cool, super high vibe guy. Him and Rebecca, his girlfriend, I'll be there a lot, chilling with them. They're awesome. And I'm going to have one of the rooms is going to be like a podcast studio, but different. Like right now I'm in my house. I'm on the ground on a cushion, like a shaman chair. And I've got like drums around me, but it's super chill. And I think that the studio is not going to be in a desk like Joe Rogan. I had this idea. It's like I want to start taking the podcast super, like the future version of me that I imagine, the identity of me that is like killing it on podcasts, that's enjoying it, having fun. I imagine that version of me like as a Joe Rogan getting offered $100 million to be on Spotify. That's not really that's not really why I'm doing this. I think I love podcasts. Podcasts are just so casual. They're so fun. They're so loose. And the ones that I do, I mean, of course, Joe Rogan's awesome. He's the biggest in the game. So it's like cool to learn from people that are successful. This is another thing I need to talk about when it comes to identity. There's somebody that has the kind of success that you want. What Tony Robbins teaches a lot of is modeling the success of someone else. So modeling the behavior, the acts, the actions that somebody else took. And like if somebody became like let's say somebody became like a top reviewed fun Uber driver, okay? And you're like, I want to be the best Uber driver ever. And there's nothing wrong with that. So maybe that's someone's intention. Now, what they could do is find somebody else that's the highest reviewed one. They could find somebody else that's like the funnest one, that has the most fun, that is enjoying it, that loves it. Find them, see what they do, ask them questions, and then model that in your own unique way. And if you do that, you then get a similar result. It's like there's patterns in reality that certain people have done. And because we're in this reality too, we can almost pick up on that same energy structure, but it's also just very practical. I look at somebody like in my own life, like my intention is in 5 or 10 years to be doing kind of what Tony Robbins does. Of course, he's like freaking, huge in many different ways with what he does. Like he's got big events. He's got like 5 multi-billion-dollar companies and stuff. But what I mean is like traveling, doing live events at big like convention centers and stuff. That's my future version of me. So what I could do is look, I've done this before, and when I read the book of somebody that's already obtained the level of success that I aspire to be like, and I just know that's my purpose, is to do public speaking. It's not just to always make videos. So when I look at him, I can say, well, what did he do? Well, he started doing videos like this. This is a funny thing. He literally started doing like his Date with Destiny event, which I went to, and I paid like $5,000 to go to, or no, I paid like $8,000 to go to or something, with my buddy Victor Otto. And it was awesome. However, when he first started doing that back in like the 80s, he did them in the backyard of his house. So I thought that was okay. So he started doing it. He had like 15 people in the backyard of his house, and he was like helping them, and they just got much more one-on-one, obviously, than 5,000 people in a big crowd. But I think that's super cool. So I learned that about Tony when I don't remember how exactly I found that out. I think I saw it, or I found that out somehow. And then I'm thinking to myself, well, how do I bridge my current reality where I'm making daily videos I was making daily videos on YouTube. I've tapered that down just a tad. I'm still making videos on YouTube, but I've been focused on, learning and doing, I email my list. I maintain a relationship with my people. But how do I bring it to the next level and bring people in person? Well, I looked at someone like my identity, the way I'm thinking, feeling, and acting equal to the version of Aaron that's making daily videos on YouTube, that is being a certain way. Well, now what I do is I imagine the version of, I imagine and can see that Tony did events in his backyard. And that's how he started. So maybe that's a way of getting in that vibration, of bridging the vibration. So now what I notice is that even for me, I have this new house in Sedona, which is an amazing house, by the way. I'm super excited. It is just phenomenal. And to have 20, 15, 20, 30 people there in my backyard and me teaching them how to go through the shift experience, that sounds pretty exciting to me. So guess what I think I'm going to do? It's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to bridge the identity that I'm in now with making videos on YouTube and doing email marketing and my podcast and creating content. And I'm still going to do many of these things, but I'm going to bridge that reality by then taking action as that version of me by doing and modeling the behavior of somebody that's already done it before me. And yes, you can also pave your own way and do it in your own way. You don't feel limited. But many people say, oh, I don't know where to start. You're an artist, and you're like, I want to get my art out there. I want to do this, that. Well, what are some other things some other people may have apprenticed? They may have gone to someone else that's an amazing art gallery studio owner and asked them questions and saw how they could assist them. They may have teamed up with other people that could get their information, their images out there, or their art out there, you see. So when we talk about identity, realize that your current identity is simply comfortable. You're just really comfortable. You're comfortable maybe working the job you're working. You're comfortable maybe in a relationship that isn't serving you, or without, you're just not making a change in that relationship to make it more passionate. Comfortable, the ego's job is to just keep you to survive. The job of your ego is not to help you thrive unless your identity of yourself is that you are someone that thrives. Your ego and your self-image will do anything it can to remain consistent to the way it defines itself. So if you find that you are doing the same things, thinking the same thoughts, and feeling the same emotions every day, it's okay. It's just that's all your ego wants to do is self-preserve. But if you want to go beyond that, you're going to have to take action and step into the unknown in order to break apart the old structure of identity to then you be something new. You can only create something new by stepping into the unknown. Nothing amazing is ever created in the known. Because if you've done the same, the known is what you've consistently think, felt, and acted as. So if you were to do something new, it would be not beyond what you've currently thought, beyond what you've currently felt, beyond what you currently do. So the key to this is identifying your current self and then identifying your future self, the ideal version of you that's also connected to your passion. And then what you do is you simply not acknowledge and see what actions you could take, what ways you could challenge the old self to then become the new self. The intention and action is normally the bridge. That is the bridge to your new reality. And the bridge to your new reality is what then puts you on that timeline. I was on a certain timeline when I was working that 9-to-5 job selling women's shoes. And that timeline was I was thinking the same thoughts, feeling the same emotions, doing the same things every day, and therefore I experienced the same thing every single day. But then what I did is I made a new choice. Really, it's a new choice about your identity. It's a new choice about who you are that then you begin to commit to. So I committed to making daily videos on YouTube. So here I am working that 9-to-5 job. It's kind of lukewarm. I decided I'm going to make daily videos on YouTube. Wasn't very comfortable. I was working 40 hours a week at that job, and then I started making videos 30 hours a week. I was very busy. But guess what? That uncomfortableness, I was in a new experience. Then eventually, my outer reality began to change according to that new choice that I made. So any one of you listening to this right now, you have a current story that you tell yourself about who you are. You have a current identity for who you've been. And if you always base it on the past and you think, feel, and act that way, you're always going to get the same result. The key is identifying a new future version of you, a version of you that is more passionate, that is really the more authentic version of you. How do you think, feel, and act in that reality? And then simply take action and bridge your old reality to the new reality. You simply decide that that's who you are now, and you don't wait for the outer reality to change and to tell you that you've changed. You just simply be it for the sake of being it because it's who you are, not because of what it'll get you. I was making daily videos on YouTube because I knew that if I were to be that version of me, I would eventually get a new reflection in life, but also because it's just who I am. Making daily videos, it started to feel so right. Something about it just felt so right. I just felt passionate. But in the beginning, it was unfamiliar and it was uncomfortable, and I'm talking into a camera, and it just felt like there's all these stories that will develop too that'll say, are you sure you want to do this? This is hard. That's the self-preservation mechanism. Remember, your ego, your avatar just wants to survive, nothing more. Because something more than surviving could represent something unsafe, something uncertain, and could cause you to then be in a less optimal state than you are from the fear perspective. Fear isn't a bad thing. Fear is there to keep you to survive. It's just that we have all these rules and these BS ways we put ourselves in fear based on our own reasoning. And once we become aware of it, that's when we can then break out of it. So the key is really, first off, old identity, how you think, feeling, and acting, understanding that your old identity will do anything it can to remain consistent the way it defines itself, and that the fear that comes up when you start doing something new, that fear is just safety preservation mechanism that's trying to keep you to survive. Even if that survival is in its sense of identity of being poor, of being unhappy in a relationship, of being miserably single. These are all choices that people sometimes make, not knowing it, and then they try to remain consistent to it, not knowing that remaining consistent to it thing is like that's the payoff. They get a payoff by being right. One of the dirtiest highs of the ego is the ego always wants to be right, even at the expense of happiness. Many of you may know this story that I've shared many times, but I was in Hawaii with my ex-girlfriend Leeor, who's also one of my best. She's still my best friend, but we were traveling from Hawaii back to California, and we were getting our plane ticket while we were at this place called Maui Kombucha in Maui. It's amazing. And what we did is we made tickets. We got tickets at the same time. She put in her information, I put in my information, and when her transaction went through first, it then bumped we got first class because we didn't want to we were so tired of Japan, all this stuff. So we're like, let's upgrade. Let's treat ourselves to first class. When she upgraded, because of the way the system works, and it was two different transactions. She paid, and then it immediately bumped mine from like $350 to like $800, or it was like $400 to $800 for one way first class, because she booked hers before mine. So in the moment that happened, I then called Expedia or whoever I called, and I was like kind of bitching to them. I was like, hey, this, we should get the same price because we booked at the same time. We could have done the same transaction if we would have known all this stuff. And I was like, I'm sorry, there's nothing we can do. because the way the system works, just the way the system works. And I was like, that's not right. I should get to pay. Why should I get to pay more? All because she booked it a minute before me and paid an extra $500. It doesn't seem fair. But I then realized in that moment, I was also developing the content for the Shift Experience. Many of you heard of or heard me talk about. And I was realizing more and more about the ego. And I realized that I wanted to be right. And my desire to be right was getting in the way of me being happy. And the moment I realized this, it was such a freeing feeling. I realized that I could give up the need to be right, surrender, and I was able to be happy. I was actually happy because then I was like, oh, this is content that I can use for the Shift Experience. So I was like, oh, I reframed the meaning. Remember, everything in life is fundamentally meaningless. We're the ones that give it meaning. Now, the old identity is trapped in its labels. It is trapped in its sense of who he or she is and what he or she can do. And the identity just wants to remain consistent and to survive. Now, the key for you is to realize that all transformation and all shifting your identity is making a new choice about who you are. Becoming aware of your old identity, then observing who your new identity may be, and it can change, but the future version of you. And then it is simply making a new choice about who you are and then wiring it in. That is transformation at its core. And the process and the person you become along the way is what you take with you. So if you look at any movie, if you look at the movie The Matrix, which I was watching yesterday, you got Neo. Neo had to unlearn who he was to then become who he was meant to be. Almost everyone on the hero's journey goes through a process of transformation. It is questioning, becoming aware of the old identity, the old story, the challenges, and then going through a process, going through the hero's journey, and then on the other side of that, coming out and going through a transformation. And the movies that we really enjoy are movies where people go through a transformation. People go through a transformation that is what we like, and if we can relate to the character as well. If the character is flawed, we relate to it even more. So in many ways, one of the biggest keys and the biggest things you can do in order to shift your life is to become aware of your old identity, to question it, and to make a new choice about who you are and to wire it in. But remember, you're not wiring it in so that you get a new reflection in your life. You're wiring it in because it's who you are. When we do things to get somewhere else, we're living in the future. And I learned it the hard way. After I became successful on YouTube, I went from 0 to 500,000 subs within a year and a half, 2 years. Started traveling the world, started making more money, and my identity shifted. But what I realized is that I then was living and really believing that things had to be very hard. I started to have this belief and this understanding that maybe if I just get a little bit more subs, I'll be happier. If then. I was always living for the future. Because it's a trap. When I first got on YouTube, I was like, oh man, 100,000 subs would be really cool. And I started making daily videos, and eventually, I got there within 3 to 6 months. But then after that, the ego, the mind, does something very interesting. It then ups it. So after I hit 100, I was like, wow, what about 200? 200 is a lot. 200 would feel really cool. It's like 200,000. That'd be really cool. And then what happens is then it's 300, and then you hit 250. I'm like, what about 500,000? And you hit 500,000. What about 750? That's like almost 1 million. And now that's 950K, and it's what about 1 million? Well, once 1 million comes, it'll probably be 1.2. It's an if-then. It's always waiting for the future instead of enjoying it for the present moment. And if I were to make videos because of wanting more subscribers, it's a very surface level thing. The key is tapping into that growth. Something I'm learning right now as well is I was reading a book recently. It's called The Big Leap. It talks about something in that book called the upper limit problem. We all have an upper limit problem where a way that we see ourselves, that then if we begin to act in a different way, we have this self-preservation mechanism that comes in to kind of adjust us back to where we think we should be. But one of the things we do is when we're taking action and we have this identity for something we want to accomplish, what we do is we have this, we feel stuck, or this is what happens. When people start to get successful, this is like a trap. Many times people will start doing something because they're passionate about it and because they want to add value and they want to help people. What sometimes then happens is people start to develop an ego, and they start to identify with their success. They start to identify with what they've obtained. They start to identify with these things. And as they start to identify with it, they then move from doing it because they love it and doing it because it's for growth, and they then move into doing it because they're trying to maintain the status of what they have accomplished. They then go from growth to maintaining. Because before, you're hungry. You're hungry. You're working a 9-to-5 job, and you want out. You want to do what you love. You want to go for your passion. So you become innovative. You become creative. But then what eventually happens is then you start getting all the success, and you have to live up to an image. When I go places and I meet people, especially when I'm in Sedona, I got a house in Sedona now. I'm excited about it. I meet so many subscribers there, and I think that's really cool. It's really exciting. However, what I've become aware of is that there's a certain sometimes pressure for me to be a certain way when I meet people. And I feel bad sometimes. I lost my wallet for like an hour. I couldn't remember where I put my wallet the other day. And there's a guy I could tell is a subscriber that recognized me. And he's like, hey, and I could just see he really wanted to talk. But I was like, I couldn't find my wallet. And I just wanted to find my wallet. But there's this pressure sometimes to be a certain way and to and to kind of live up to a certain image, a self-preservation mechanism. But what I'm realizing is I just have to be myself. I'm also just getting used to kind of that dynamic of meeting people and stuff in public, which is cool, Try not to identify with it too much and just enjoy it. But I could definitely see how as I become more successful, there's this self-preservation thing where I'm like, I have to continue just making videos. It's like I've kind of in some ways stopped growing with trying to make new innovative videos. I'm just kind of doing what works. So I need to find a new way, a new style, a new way of doing that. Maybe it's like making documentary style YouTube videos that are a little bit longer, or maybe putting more of an editing flair in it or a new type of topics. I'm not sure. But I could definitely see how that works with identity, because the identity wants to just remain self-preservation mechanism. But you might be in a stage of your life where you just have to get creative and start finding a way, make a new choice about who you are. And as you do, you'll find that then you end up on a more optimal timeline and you experience more of what you want. But if you just remain in that comfortableness, you might find that, yes, it's comfortable, but you might find that you want to actually challenge it and do something new. And if there's one message I can tell you today is become aware of your old story, become aware and begin to unlearn that which you've learned by questioning it, by seeing that many of these beliefs you have weren't even your own. They were someone else's that were handed down to you. And then make a new choice about who you are and simply decide that this is who you are now. Then identify the future version of you, how you think, feel, and act, and then simply decide that that's who you are now. And don't let your outer reality dictate who you are on the inside. If old friends and family are trying to see you in your old way, just realize that that's just them wanting to not have to redefine you and to do the work to think of you differently. But you have to see yourself that way. When you begin to believe it, then they will believe it. I completely transformed my life from the inside out by changing my identity. Any one of you can do it too. Yes, there'll be an initial period where people are like, this isn't who you. When I started meditating, people, friends, family, they're like, what are you doing? You're meditating? Not in a mean way, but what? It changed my lifestyle in many ways, and I just couldn't understand necessarily. And it challenged their image of me. But what you have to do is you have to trust it. You have to make a new choice about who you are and then wire it in with action. So, like I said, if you haven't heard before of the Shift Experience, if you go to AaronDoughty.com/shiftnow, SHIFTNOW, that is the Shift Experience. I can help you shift into that reality, literally become that future version of you permanently. That's the goal. That's the intention. So that's called the Shift Experience. And if you go there right now, you'll also see some bonuses as well. It's AaronDoughty.com/shiftnow, SHIFTNOW. And I will help you do that. But yeah, shifting, it's what I did to transform my life. It's what I've helped hundreds and hundreds of people do. It's what I love to help you to do. But shifting your identity, you shift your identity, then you shift your life. So with that being said, if you could do me a favor and review this podcast on iTunes if you haven't yet, it really means the world to me. Share this episode on iTunes. If it resonated with you, it helps the podcast grow. And let me know what you thought of it. as well, and I'll be sharing those on Instagram also as I see them. Other than that, as always, I will talk to you guys later. I love you. Peace, much love, and namaste.